Hello and welcome to this week's second edition of the Scrimshaw Show. My name's Evan Scrimshaw. It's a bit of a change of pace today. We're going from David Coletto, Canadian politics, and I mean, by every metric, the most singularly influential person I've ever had on the Scrimshaw Show, to shooting the shit with one of my favorite people, admittedly, about F1, Formula whatever. How are you?
Hello. And listen, I may not be very influential in Canadian politics, but I do think I played some small part in getting the internet to like Nico Rosberg, which some might argue is a greater feat.
What would be more impressive? You single-handedly rehabilitating Nico's image to part of the internet, or me finally getting the Canadian Liberals to fucking fire Justin Trudeau?
Probably the second one, to be fair. Also, many other people did their part, specifically Dev, and also all of the Nico warriors on Twitter. We may be small, but we are a mighty group and growing by the day. So,
in fairness, there are, when you get really, really mad about either 2010, Sebastian Vettel in general, or Nico Rosberg, I do feel that same strength that I like facing you that I face from what we call the Trudeau diehards, a play on QAnon, which we call them all Truanon.
As nicknames go, that's pretty good.
Yeah, no, it's great. But these people are no, actually, you know who Truanon are in the F1 world?
Who?
Andretti stands.
Yeah. I feel bad because I have a couple mutuals who are on this bandwagon, and I don't want them to think I'm talking about them because I love and adore 99% of their content. But I also just feel like it's not even the opinion itself. Well, I actually found out he's a despicable person. So, but that aside, I didn't know that for like 90% of this journey. It just became such a like cool girl opinion. And it really reminds me, and I don't mean that just women hold it. It's actually the majority of it is men. But I just mean like that sort of energy where it's like, it's the same thing as being like F1 isn't the pinnacle of motorsport, or like being the best F1 driver doesn't mean, or like who's a better driver, like a NASCAR driver or a Formula One driver. And I'm like, I don't know who's a better runner, a marathon runner or a sprinter. Like we're talking about fundamentally different activities at that point. So it just kind of became one of those where a hard-o line is probably the best way to put it. Like, who cares about, I don't understand caring that much beyond that. I think it's like an underground IndyCar opinion.
I mean, the thing is that like there are people who are like Colton Herta is better at road track. I don't know if this is still true. I remember that being like the talking point originally. It's like that's a fine opinion to have, right? But like the people who are like, no, it is anti-American racism that is keeping Andretti out of F1.
Xenophobia. I was accused of xenophobia. First of all, xenophobia means fear of something different, and I'm literally American. I'm from the Northeast of America, the same place that Mario Andretti is from, so it literally cannot be xenophobic.
Your family I actually don't know when your family came over, but you are demographically of the kind of person whose family may as well have come over on the fucking Mayflower.
You know what's so funny? And any Europeans listening to this, necessary disclaimer, I do not actually believe that I'm Irish. I'm about to talk about the dynamics of the Northeast United States of America. Please do not come for me. But I'm also Irish and he's Italian. So low-key, there is some like regional tension there historically, but like I feel...
Yeah, I mean, you were never allowed to watch the singular greatest movie. Actually, I don't think it's the best movie of all time, but the funniest comedy of all time because you didn't watch Italian movies, aka any movie with Joe Pesci in it.
My God, I said we weren't allowed. There were Irish mob movies too. We weren't allowed to watch those. I'm not even allowed. My parents
My
just
Cousin Vinny isn't a mob movie. Just has
what?
Joe Pesci in it. My Cousin Vinny isn't a mob movie. It's a courtroom drama with Joe Pesci.
Got my wires mixed on. I just didn't know what My Cousin Vinny was. Obviously.
Yeah, but here's the thing. It's the best comedy of all time.
Yeah, I guess we just didn't really watch that many movies growing up, and I still kind of don't. We're just much more of a TV/sports family. And
Yeah.
I'm so sorry if you can hear this. They decided to take my garbage out right at this very moment in time, which is very annoying, but I don't think you can hear it. It's not too loud.
No, I can't. Do you have a take on the fact that we were recording this basically as Twitter is having a field day with the fact that the United Healthcare CEO shooter, he's hot.
Wait, they caught him? They just know who he is. They haven't apprehended him
Oh,
yet.
they haven't apprehended him yet? I thought they. Oh, whatever.
Has-
I'm only half paying attention to this.
Have they?
I was recording with David Coletta this morning. Bite me.
That's very fine. I just saw his picture. I didn't see that. Help.
Well, he apparently got caught with the gun, or no, because somebody caught him with the gun in his, because he still had the gun on him.
What? Why would you not get rid of the gun?
I don't know, but he got caught in a McDonald's today or something. I don't know if he got away from McDonald's. I don't know if whatever, but he's really hot. And the two photos that everyone are using is his Twitter profile picture, which is him in a suit, and then a shirtless selfie.
I pray that if I first of all, I pray that I am never being talked about by the mainstream news for any reason whatsoever, good, bad, or otherwise. I simply do not want that smoke. It's like getting invited to a team event. Like I would, not that I ever would, because I literally talk shit about every single team, but getting invited to the garage like that, or like that Mercedes dinner or whatever, like everyone on the internet just comes for you. They'll find something because they're mad that it wasn't them. And it happens every single time.
We'll get back to that Mercedes dinner. I think your point was about to be you would love to be as hot as him, right?
I completely got off track on that. I pray that they choose photos as flattering as the one they chose for that man. If he does end up going to prison, he is going to be swimming in prison wives, like the women that want to marry guys in prison.
Here's the thing. 0% chance in New York City jury is tossing that guy in jail. 0% chance.
No, I think there's a pretty good chance he gets off. The problem is they kind of have him dead to rights. And like
does not matter. Get two gay men on that panel, and
well, I also think that everybody is obviously on his side, but I mean, it's true. Juries, I don't know. I'm not a
they are not tossing that. They are not tossing that motherfucker in jail.
Yeah, there's no way.
No way. Because the thing is, whether any of this is like quote unquote justified, right? I'm not here to have that fight. But the story that seems to be congealing from people who knew him, because he's been online this entire time, right? This is a new generation of people. And more importantly, everyone who went to high school and university with him, all of his frat brothers are literally just like tweeting stories. He pledged some frat at UPenn, right? Like there's just stories. It seems like what happened is there's a back x-ray, what looks like a spinal x-ray. Clearly something got fucked up there. And that is, as the story goes, his like radicalization point. If you get that motherfucker, if you get him in a jury cell, he cries properly, you tell that story, 0% chance a New York jury convicts him.
I mean, I hope that you're correct, but I'm also concerned because though I am on his side, it is still technically illegal to shoot somebody, like pretty severely illegal. But also what I'm thinking, it also is the city of New York, no? Because murder is not a federal crime.
Yeah.
Unless
you're correct about this. Yeah, it's a New York jury.
On federal property. So I guess I would need to know more about the rules in New York, because is he necessarily guaranteed a jury trial?
pretty sure everybody for murder across basically the entire world of fair trials, you could ask for a jury trial for murder.
Okay. I mean, good. That's what I assume and would hope, but
Also, this guy is rich as fuck, so he will have the best lawyer in the world.
Oh, best case scenario. That's true. I feel like he'll plead down to like manslaughter or something because
he's gonna plead down to let me walk or you're gonna get embarrassed when a jury fucking
you don't necessarily go to jail for you don't necessarily go to jail for manslaughter. You can let me see, manslaughter minimum. I'm like now getting into the sentence.
I think you're underestimating how much you just need one. You just need one. And I don't see how they're getting 12.
I also think you're overestimating the United States legal system's capacity for nuance.
I think you're correct that it has very little capacity for nuance. I think that helps him in this case. Also, when was the last time a young rich white guy went to jail for something this serious?
Those are all huge factors as well.
If this guy were even similarly hot,
and he's hot, being hot.
But even if he was similarly hot and he was black, that motherfucker's going to jail for 40 years.
Yeah, no, you would be fucked. Although New York is maybe one of the better places that could happen for you, but you would still be in.
But they try him in Manhattan with a Manhattan jury, and he'd be DOA. That would be a 12-minute jury deliberation. It'd be faster than OJ. Now, if you tried that shit if they were able to get that shit tried in the Bronx,
well,
he'd have a different conversation.
And where'd he do it? I'm assuming.
I'm assuming financial district because I assume that's where UHC has their.
Having the meeting is the craziest part of it. Like, I just like imagine because he was supposed to get it. It was his meeting. He was putting on the meeting. So that means that there is somebody else who knows somebody went to them and was like, you have to do the meeting now. And you're like, oh, I have to take the role of the guy who just got shot. Awesome. But like on top of that, you're like, and this person who I presumably know personally just got shot. Now I have to put on this huge investor meeting in like 30 minutes. That still having the meeting is diabolical. I mean, I'm not surprised, but like even just
you could almost say that still having the meeting proves every point about American capitalism.
For sure. Just the logistics of that happening is genuinely crazy.
It's great.
To sit there in the presentation and be like, so like, and they had to probably like announce it at the that's just got to be among the wilder meetings of all time.
It's great. It's fantastic. This is supposed to be an F1 podcast. I know the transition. Were you on Twitter the morning of the great "Why is Oscar Piastri in F1? Didn't he kill somebody?" tweet?
Yes, it was one of the more iconic tweets of all time, and I hope that nobody was mean to that girl because by and large, what I saw, like, it's honestly such an honest slip up, but it's such a fucking hilarious slip up.
I certainly only saw fun reaction to that. Obviously, the person who this girl was thinking of was Oscar Pistorius.
Yeah.
The South African
mistake
runner who he was convicted, right?
Listen, as someone who thought that reindeers were a fictional animal until I was 23 years old, I'm never gonna make fun of someone for something that's like, sometimes you're just a little bit off base on something, and confusing Oscar Piastri with Oscar Pistorius, it's close. It's close.
It's one of these things where it's like that was just a great day on Twitter, mostly because, again, at least as far as I saw it, most people were not that it didn't break containment until she knew and had corrected it.
Yeah.
Which meant that everyone was just like, well, this is an iconic tweet, as opposed to, oh my God, these fucking, like, we didn't have to do a round of like female fans
No,
nonsense about it.
definitely. And then, which is great. I just know how evil people on the internet can be. Like, I had when the Barbie movie first came, it was before the movie came out. I just did a like a stupid little Canva graphic that was like a scale, and it was like Barbie to Ken. And I didn't even really, this was not like a deep analysis. The movie was not out yet. But it was like, she's Barbie, he's just Ken. So it was like a little bit of an insult to be just Ken. But at the same time, I don't think it.
Weren't you deeply offensive about George Russell in that?
Well, I don't think it's offensive to be just Ken, because like I don't think it has any bearing on how. Like, I think Kimi Räikkönen is the perfect, like, he's the ultimate, he's just Ken. And he was like an incredibly talented driver. You know what I mean?
Oh, we need to talk about Kimi at some point during this. I have a hot take on Kimi Räikkönen.
You're not gonna I'm not gonna fight with you about Kimi Räikkönen. Like, he is good, and I know you're gonna say he's bad, and I'm mad about it.
He couldn't win a race until 2018 Coda in a race-winning Ferrari for like 6 years.
Listen, you have to give me time. You can't just spring these debates on me. You have to give me time to prepare material, because I gotta be honest with you, I don't really rewatch Sebastian's Ferrari period with the same fervor as I do his Red Bull period, for obvious reasons. And also because like the Nico and Lewis of it all, it's like sad to watch. You know what I mean? Like, they're both clearly, everybody is clearly just having a bad time. And you're like, this is just awkward.
So I rewatched Abu Dhabi 2016 last week. Friday night, I think. Yeah, Friday night. I rewatched Abu Dhabi 2016 with somebody who had never seen it before. And that is a painful rewatch.
So
Lewis just being the worst. Max somehow turning that into a one-stop. Seb just like totally, absolutely could have passed Nico and just deciding not to.
I mean,
Iconic.
iconic
shit from Seb.
I think you're, first of all, I think that is a possibility for sure. But I also think that I think it's more this way. You underestimate how hard it was back in the day to overtake Abu Dhabi. Like, when that track first happened, it was like basically Monaco in the desert. And I think that, you know, Seb's a crazy person. Like, I think that he made the calculated choice that was like, you know what, I'm not gonna be like unhinged right now and like ruin Nico's life for no reason, which I probably would have done. Like,
but so the only reason I say that about Seb is he had such a tire advantage at the end of that race because they sent him long on his first two stints. Like, he got by Verstappen fairly fast. Like,
that's
no,
true. Mercedes was that much better than the Red Bull.
Sure. However, Nico couldn't exactly use any of that latent pace given shenaniganery ahead of him.
Yeah. I think Sebastian Vettel made the strategic decision not to get involved in that bullshit, especially given the nature of Abu Dhabi and like the level of aggressive he would have had to be. Because Nico and Lewis were so close together, like that would have been like a 3-person fight. You know what I mean? That is another factor. And there's a chance that it could all go sideways. Like, also, like when he looks at how Nico and Lewis are currently racing each other, which is like, I will like crash into you and I actually don't give a fuck. At that point, he is like, he made a strategic choice. And I do think some of it was probably influenced by a desire to not ruin, like, I think he was genuinely happy for Nico, because you can definitely see a turn, like Sebastian Vettel was like low-key, a little bit of a bully toward Nico Rosberg, especially in the early years there with Michael Schumacher. Not like, I don't use the term bully, meaning like he was, in his defense, it was very funny. And, you know, a lot of it pretty warranted. But I think that he felt bad for Nico at the end, and I don't mean that in like a pity way, but I think he was able to. They grew up a little bit, and he was like, also like Nico Rosberg was clearly going through it. The way he's like openly sobbing after the end of that whole race, and you know the fact that his dad's an F1 driver, like I'm happy that Nico Rosberg won a championship. And I think I would feel that way even if I wasn't like a stan.
Yeah, and like the funny thing about that generation of drivers, that's the generation where basically all of the good drivers, you could argue Felipe Massa, but I don't view Felipe on that level. All of that generation of drivers got their title, right? Kimi got 2007, Jensen got 09, Lewis obviously got all of his, Nico got his, Seb got his 4. They all got their title. Fernando got his 2. I know Fernando's a bit older, but like, you know, spiritually he is in that sort of like post Schumacher, you know, 5 on the bounce era, right?
It's interesting, like Seb and Fernando get lumped in with the rest of those, but they were in the F1 for like 10 years before the rest of them came around.
Right. But like, it's just, you mean Kimi and Fernando, obviously.
Yes, but Jensen also, I think, started. He's like, I think, significantly ahead of them too. Let me Google that. Jensen.
Yeah. No, but the point being is that like that whole generation, they all got their titles, whereas, like, you know, generally that doesn't always happen.
No.
And I think the really interesting thing is going to be like of this generation of the let's cap the generation, Max, Charles.
I think it's 20. So the way I see it is like there's the like 2010 to 2015 crowd, which is like Checo,
Danny Ricks, Valtteri, Checo.
Valtteri, yeah. There's Nico Hulkenberg, K-Mag, I think. And then there's 2015 to 2020, which is Max, Charles, George, Lando, Alex. Is that all? There's more. Pierre.
I'm tossing Oscar into this group.
No, I think Oscar's the first of the next ones.
Yeah, but the thing is, I want to talk about him in the context of the rest of them, and like also he's only like 2 years younger than Lando. The problem is that like what really is there's the mini generation. The problem is that there's like the Carlos, Lance, Daniel Kvyat mini generation that mostly all sucks.
Yeah,
but the thing is, Max got in so young that he fucks it up. But Max, again, in birth year, Max is with the Oscar Lando thing, but he's just been at F1 for so much longer.
But that's why I think 2015 to 2020 is perfect, because I think like I view all of them sort of together.
See, buddy, I don't. I view Charles, George, like basically the Twitch quartet, Max and Oscar, I view it very much as a distinct generation.
They've all been in F1 for like 5 years, and Oscar got here, or like they were in F1 for like 5 years before him.
Okay, fine. It's a more useful, cohesive distinction for the point I want to make.
I'm not going to change my mind about the generations, but yes.
No, I know, which is why I'm reframing my point so that I can win this fight.
Contextually, fine.
Okay. So if we agree that it's really the Quits quartet or the Quits trio, because no offense, Alex, I don't think anybody thinks you're winning a world championship. Max.
Unfortunately, I do agree on that.
Max and Oscar, right? If we treat those 5, one of them is probably not winning a title.
Oscar's not winning a world championship.
Oh, we'll talk about Oscar in 2 minutes. I kind of wonder if Lando flubbed his best chance.
Well, we just never know. Like, you just never know what's going to happen with the cars. But
the case for it's pretty simple. One, Red Bull seems to have figured something out pace-wise towards the end of this season.
Well, I don't think McLaren will be dominant next year. Maybe that's me just wanting that to be the case. But ultimately, when it comes to 2026 and beyond, like we have no idea. Like McLaren could randomly 3 years from now go on a 10-year run of being amazing. But my thing is like, I think what we learned this year when Max, he gained points on Lando through most of the end of the year. And
Max won the Miami and after championship.
Right. And so like it was so funny. Lando in his post race, he was like, well, yeah, it just happened for us a little late this year. I'm like, what do you mean? It doesn't matter the timing. You lost points, even if it had been this way, like even if that was the whole championship. But I mean, obviously it would have been closer. But what we learned this year is that it turns out it in fact is not just the car. Like people are like, oh, can Max win without Newey? Like Max can't win without a good car. Nobody can win without a good car. That's a premise we simply must accept. But not everybody can do it with the right car. Lando Norris objectively to come in and week out and qualify on pole and win 80% of the time. And even when you're not winning, to be on the podium, to maximize every single weekend is a very, very, very difficult thing to do. And we have just been spoiled because obviously when a team is that good, all of the best drivers want to go there and they're probably going to acquiesce at some point.
Like, is Lando Norris the worst driver to have the like definitively best car in the last 2 decades?
2 decades, definitely not. Mark Webber. No, I don't know. I don't like to say who the worst.
Sorry. As a number one.
I don't think Lando. Well, first of all,
because Checo is the actual answer to that question.
Winning to be number one is part of it. People act like it's this thing that's set in stone or decided in some shadowy back alley or written into. You can write whatever you want in the contract. If you're out qualifying your teammate week in and week out, it doesn't matter. Like from the jump, like if you're ahead on points, the team wants a driver's world champion. Period. Full stop. Maybe, yes, they would prefer it to be the other person. But if you make it clear that you are the better option, they will probably go with you 8 times out of 10. Now,
so what you're telling me is that part of the reason that George Russell, quote unquote, got priority this year was because he kicked Lewis's ass at the beginning of the season? That it wasn't just an evil conspiracy by Toto Wolff?
Well, I also think it's normal to, like, Lewis is leaving. You know what I mean? So of course they want to help, like they are going to prioritize George. I feel like that's somewhat normal and Ferrari didn't do it. So maybe it's not, and maybe it is an evil conspiracy. But now when it comes to development, it's slightly more nuanced, right? Because that does matter a lot. However, at the end, so that can create situations where like you're in a tough place, but it's rarely such a problem that like
I think people have overrated how often the Carlos Charles thing of like Charles likes a very oversteery car with a pointy front end, and Max and Carlos likes it the opposite. I think I have that right. I have the front end bit right with Charles.
Yeah.
But I don't really know Lewis's quote unquote like driving style. I don't know what kind of car he likes, mostly because he can just drive a lot of cars.
I think obviously the driving style thing is far more nuanced than that. Yeah. And that's actually something I think about a lot. Like I would love to sit down with Nico Rosberg and like explain to me like what exactly what are the contributing factors? What are certain different elements that people prefer? Why? And like, give me an example of different people's styles. And then also like, do you think that there are overall categories that people fall into? Because it's obviously much more nuanced than the understeer oversteer thing. It also, Ferrari has a whole suspension subplot going on that I don't even know, because all of the Italian tabloids are like, they all are just writing different things about the suspension. I don't know what to think because I don't know anything about suspensions. But what I do know is that Ferrari had a very, very, first of all, the mid-year development is a problem across the board. This has nothing to do with 2022. It's a problem
We
every.
will do this. We will do this. We will do this. I have a whole Ferrari section for you to do this right then.
But
Okay.
the choices that Mattia Binotto made in the 2022-2023 offseason made the car fundamentally worse. And it not only did it become a lot more understeery at a time when the regs and the rest of the cars were pushing in the other direction, but the fact that we have Carlos Sainz's dad literally on TV being like, they're going to go more in Carlos's direction next year, and the fact that he literally would be like, oh yeah, I don't really like it, whatever, whenever the car was fast. And then when he was comfortable, we were slow. So like, yes, we can't definitively know whether it was Binotto made those choices because he was trying to cater to Carlos's driving style. However, it's a hell of a coincidence. And either way, those choices were bad.
Yeah, but my all that's true. All that's real. I don't think that's going to be an issue with Lewis. Like,
I hope they'll be more aligned. I'm also hoping that it could be ultimately beneficial to Charles, because the problem with Ferrari is that you watched it play out in the middle of the season. They take all driver feedback as like inherent criticism. And that's a problem because driver feedback is like pretty important to develop your car.
yeah, I think
Lewis is gonna speak his mind. One thing about Lewis is I trust him. Like, and also I just think that and people are like, I don't mean that as a criticism of Charles. I just think that he is very deeply ingrained in the Ferrari culture, and it's the only team he's ever really driven for, because when he drove for Sauber, it was basically Ferrari Junior, right? It was like him and Marcus Ericsson. But also Sauber's not exactly, or at that point was not exactly a race winning operation. You know what I mean? Lewis has all of these experience in McLaren, in Mercedes, in teams that operated well and got it done.
Lewis has seen what a well-oiled machine of Paddy Lowe, Niki Lauda, Toto Wolff. Was Ross Brawn still around for like 2014 to 16?
No, I think maybe he was like an advisor or something, but I don't think he was that.
But, okay, but like, but that has like but that also has the sort of like legacy holdover of the Ross Brawn era.
The structure.
Yeah. He is about to walk into a, clown car calamity of internal politics and nonsense. He's going to have ideas about how to fix that. And I think those ideas would be well heeded by Ferrari. Here's we'll get back to Ferrari though, because I have like a whole 2025 predictions thing, and like we'll have a Ferrari segment, and like I have a game, okay?
Oh, I'm excited. I love it.
Yeah, I am a full believer in the Bill Simmons school of just like make everything a gimmick, make everything a game. So we're doing the biggest 2025 question for every team. I've not every team, because frankly I'm not doing like fucking steak and whatever, but of the teams I care about.
Yeah, relevant team.
Yeah, which does not necessarily equate to performance this year by any means, because I'm not going to pretend I give a single shit about Aston Martin. Well, whatever. I think Oscar Piastri is massively I think the pendulum has swung too far, because in the like post Baku thing with Oscar, everyone was like, "Oh, he's a future WDC." We saw it because remember his like 5 race run was win Hungary, right? Front row start, win in Hungary, obviously with controversy. Second place in Spa, but past Charles, and more importantly, was third on the road. Obviously got promoted to P2 with the George DSQ. Zandvoort wasn't fantastic, but it was still a 4th place, right? And Zandvoort's hard to overtake at. Not really, but for him it was. And then obviously steals Lando's soul at Monza, P2. With a front row start, right? And then he wins, and then he goes to Baku and wins, right? And there's all this hype cycle, and the sort of contrarian take is like, okay, yeah, you've got 2 wins, great. You're still mostly off Lando's pace. You're still mostly getting it qualified. Like, let's pump the brakes, right? Oscar's had a bad end of the season. You know, he has 2 podiums since then, both P3s. His P3 in Qatar is basically just gifted by the Lando not lifting stop and go. His P3 in Singapore would be impressive if he didn't come something like 30 seconds off his teammate when the McLaren was truly a rocket ship.
Well, it's better than being P4 when Lando's 800 seconds ahead in Zandvoort.
Right, but it's still not particularly impressive that you couldn't help your teammate out and steal more points from Max. With the Ferraris qualifying P9 and P10 out of incompetence at that race. So not great. Or, so pretty impressive. But since then, out in SQ1 in COTA, out in Q1 in Mexico, recovered to 5th in the Grand Prix in the USA, 8th in Mexico. I want to say 8th in Sao Paulo, right? Not a great week. Not great times. But I figured out the key to Oscar Piastri and good performances, right? It's tracks that he drove in F2 or F3. Okay? In his F2 season, Oscar Piastri drove 8 tracks. 8 tracks, 7 of which are currently on the F1 calendar. They also raced in Sochi that year. Bahrain, Monaco, Baku, Silverstone, Monza, Saudi Arabia, and Abu Dhabi. Okay? Here are his results in those races. Bahrain, 8th, but remember, the McLaren hadn't brought their upgrade yet. Saudi Arabia outqualifies Lando, comes P4, right? Monaco, P2 in both quali and the race. Baku, P1 in the race, P2 in quali. Silverstone, P4 in the race. Arguably could have won it if he wasn't made to do a whole nother lap around an extremely wet Silverstone, right? Instead of double stacking it, which was a total pit wall mistake. And he was the fastest car in that final stint on the dries at the end. Monza, obviously, P2 in both quali and the race with a great move. And in Abu Dhabi, P2 in quali before getting punted by Max Verstappen. If you look to the tracks that he only raced in F3, the Red Bull Ring, P2, P4 in reality with getting driven off by his teammates, but he qualified P2 and came P2 in the sprint race that weekend, right? Hungary, P2 in quali, P1 in the race. Spa pulled that P2, which is really a P3. And Spain, where he came P7. That wasn't a great weekend for him, admittedly, but it really does seem like he does really well in the places where he's driven before in the junior formulas, where he doesn't have where he has, much experience. And if that sort of continues, and if he puts some better results in the tracks he hasn't driven 1,000 times, as he's more comfortable with them, he could be right in the title fight.
He's driven 40 races. I'm sorry, but
he's driven COTA twice in his life. Lando's driven it 5.
Well, get out there, get on the simulator then, or get out there in a different kind of car, because it's I get what you mean. And
but in the places that he's had greater experience, he is on Lando or ahead of Lando often.
My thing is this: perhaps he will continue to improve, but at the end of the day, even accounting for going Miami onward onward when they had equal packages, it's the qualifying is the issue. He is. Now this is the source on this is Reddit, because I didn't feel like doing the math myself, so maybe this is a total lie, but it seems right. The average gap is 0.23 in Lando's favor, and I don't really rate Lando Norris as it's not like he's going up against Max or Charles or someone who I consider to be an incredible qualifier. I that's, and all of this number one driver, number two driver talk the driver ahead is always going to get the preferential strategy. That's what doomed him in Silverstone. And maybe he will have, after being able to drive these tracks for a second time, be stronger in the next year and be there and be out qualifying Lando. However, I just think it's crazy that driving one race, I mean, like, is that substantial of a difference? And I also kind of think that when I look in retrospect over the history of time, the drivers who are driving right now, who we consider to be, who are world champions, no, let's just look at the world champions. All of them were good right away, except for Jenson Button. But even he was like, he crushed Villeneuve and all of that stuff. So it was like more.
You're also talking about a time though with significantly greater on-track testing availability, which is not particularly there now. And also, Oscar wasn't allowed to do any on-track test. Like, Oscar Piastri legitimately drove an F1 car for the first time at F1 testing in 2023.
Okay, well, it's been 40 races since then. Like, how many?
And he has like 2 wins, 2 sprint wins.
He's done well.
Multiple sprint poles.
The only solid metric we have is Lando Norris, who I don't think either of us, and I don't think a lot of people outside of the Sky Sports headquarters building, rate very highly.
Yeah, I agree with that.
What?
I agree with you on that, obviously.
Right, so how can you be like Oscar's world champion material when he can't even
because he's only driven for 2 years. Lando has been driving this car for 6.
What, 2018, 19, 20, 21?
19, 21, 2, 3, 4, 6 years.
And Mark Webber had been driving the Red Bull car for, when's 2005? So, for 3 years, and Sebastian Vettel came in and beat him. Like, Lewis Hamilton came in and beat Fernando, a reigning world champion, Fernando Alonso. Like, even
but your argument cannot be that Lando Norris is but your argument cannot be that Mark Webber sucks 10 minutes ago and now be like, actually, it's so impressive that Seb beat Mark.
I don't think that number one, I don't think that Mark Webber sucks. I obviously think that he's a good driver. I just say that in comparison to Seb, he does suck. A lot of people suck in comparison to Seb. Mark won 8 races. He was a very good driver. And like the obligatory context that making it to F1 on his own is like there's a huge pyramid underneath that of other people. Like, if we're talking about the wider scale, but even if we're just talking about Formula One, I think Mark Webber is good, which is below great and amazing. And then you have the legends, which are the multiple time, world champions. But Mark Webber.
Am I a bad person for thinking Mark Webber's 8 wins mean more than Valtteri's 10?
Yeah, well, because Red Bull was far less competitive than Mercedes. Like, Mercedes was way faster comparison to the other teams, because in 2010 and 2012 there were 4 team championship fights.
Yeah, and also just reliability of those days was so much worse.
In terms of, I'm not going to say the championships were less competitive, because obviously Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton were clawing each other to death. But in terms of inter-team competitions, those seasons were much more competitive.
Right, but also Mark Webber has had his engine blow up from the lead more times than Valtteri has. I feel confident saying that.
Well, Red Bull did have engine problems during 2010, so that is probably true.
It's just one of these things where it's which is also, so I've said this so often. Look, I just think Piastri, give the two of them the same car next year and end of this Lando gets all the updates first.
Somebody is always going to get the updates first, and it's going to be so win in Australia, Oscar, because it's the person who gets the upgrades first. The only way you can complain about that is if you're leading the world championship. Then you should get to pick, because sometimes you don't want to be, if you like the car and you believe you can win in the car,
Yeah, you don't want to be the guinea pig.
want to be the lab rat.
Yeah.
Like Mark Webber declining that wing upgrade in Silverstone 2010, quite famously, that he didn't want it.
Should I, speaking of that wing, should I like find like an actual, like, should I actually record my like a real version of my parody song, This Charming Wing?
Yes. The Silverstone 2010 wing, you will always be famous. I don't really get the buying parts of F1 cars. Like, it is cool in a sense, but I also just wouldn't feel that, like, where am I going to put that? You hang it up on the wall, but like, I don't know if that's really the aesthetic that I'm going for. However, if I could somehow get a hold of that, I need that specific wing. Now, it did get, I think, ultimately destroyed. So I don't know if it exists somewhere in the world, some kind of museum. When I build the Sebastian Vettel museum, that wing will be in there.
Okay, so I've often said that George Russell is like a bit of a litmus test for whether F1 fans like actually know wheel, right? Because superficially, he doesn't have a particularly impressive resume, right? 6 seasons at F1, 3 wins, 2 of which were this season. You know, less podiums than Lando Norris, many less than Charles Leclerc.
Well, I think everybody is a question mark until they get in that race winning.
Let me frame the context of this point, right? Which is, you know, oh, he only came P9 in the W11 when he took over for Lewis, right? And I've always thought that George was a great litmus test for whether people actually understand what they're watching, right? Because yeah, all of those facts that I just said are true. He also was in the worst car in the grid for 2 years, the second or third worst car on the grid in 2021. He would have and should have won the Sakir Grand Prix easily before both a terrible pit stop and a puncture fucked him in Sakir when he was in that W11, which he didn't even fucking fit in. And then, like, what is he supposed to do? What races was he supposed to win in this fucking Mercedes that he couldn't? I kind of think the actual answer, though, is Charles Leclerc. And this is what I want to talk about. Because the amount of Charles Leclerc a slander I see from people and the amount of 2022 revisionism I see boggles my fucking mind. How do you look at that season and go, Charles bottled a title lead? His engine kept blowing up.
Yeah, I need to remake my video where I go through race by race all of the points he lost, because it was like in the hundreds of points. Well, first of all, his engine exploded from the lead 3 separate times that season. So that alone.
What was the third one? Baku, which he would have won. I know people are like, well, he had to stop again. Yeah, he did. But like, Max would have been taking those tires like 40 laps. Shut the fuck up. Charles would easily have won that race if he was.
That's not to mention the Hungary hard tire debacle.
No. So it's Baku, it's Spain. What was the third time his engine blew up from the lead?
Maybe it was twice, but hang on. I don't know. I'd have to get my list out, or find that video. But,
I mean, Hungary was a complete disgrace, throwing him on hard tires. I think I've told you this before, but that was the first race where I ever criticized a strategy decision, because to me it's because they had gone medium, and I'm like, well, they have to do the strategy that they end up doing with Carlos and that Mercedes ends up doing with Lewis, which is medium, and then they pit about 10 laps later for softs. They throw him on the hards, and I'm like, why are you pitting him now? You have to pit him for hards. And I'm like, what? So that is a proud moment for me, because it was the first time in my F1 fandom I actually realized the team was fucking up when they did it.
And also, like, 2 people had just gone on to the hards and they were doing so badly to the point where the commentary literally says out loud that, oh, this is really great data for the other teams. Like, the hard tires are like obviously not the move, but also, yeah, it just like was completely incongruous with the strategy that Charles was on. And oh my, I'm like, that's the problem. If I know the minute you put tires on that it's about, because there are smart people on the internet that are like, no, this date or whatever. Like, no, it was black and white. And then Mattia Binotto got on Nico Rosberg's Sky Sports and said, we didn't make a mistake with the strategy. And
even though you ended up having to pit him again.
Yeah. So that was awesome. But like, Monaco,
Silverstone, or even Christian Horner was caught by Drive to Survive telling Stefano Domenicali that they fucked Leclerc's race.
Yeah.
Christian Horner, I will have plenty of Christian Horner slander in 10 minutes on this podcast, but you know, that man does know how to make cars go fast.
I was right about I was right. I was wrong. Sorry. I meant, you're right. It was only 2 races, but still. And also but sorry. I forgot what I was going to say, but Christian Horner, I wish he didn't A, hate women, and B, be a workplace predator, because he is unfortunately incredibly funny. Like the Drive to Survive running sequence where he dramatically takes down his hood, I was in tears on my couch laughing. Like, and he's just why are all of the F1 team principals like that? Like, why are none of them normal? Fred's normal. Maybe that's the problem.
I mean, in fairness, Christian Horner somehow managed to land a Spice Girl, so clearly he is unfortunately winning at life. But like, I really think like the Lando fans need to wind their necks in about Charles. Okay, Charles is 1,000% a better driver than Lando, and Charles would have won the title in that McLaren for sure, 1,000%.
I also believe that to be true.
Like it's just so wild to me how, because again, like Charles has very impressive stats, more wins, more podiums, more pole positions, many more pole positions. But like, I think the pole conversion stat is becoming my new, like, oh, so you just don't understand the thing that you're doing here, right? Like,
yeah, that's the problem. And this is the pole conversion stat hits at to why, like, we really have why stats in F1 don't work, or they have to be far more nuanced. Like, it's just such a holistic, there are so many factors going into a Formula One weekend that trying to isolate one variable, such as the driver's performance, mathematically is incredibly difficult. And just pulling up a simple pole conversion ratio is deeply flawed. Like, it's not something like passes completed, like where there are other factors, but it's like you're measuring something that they're doing. You're only measuring that would be like judging a quarterback based on wins.
Well, this is so it's the MJ 6-0 in the finals is the equivalent, right? How MJ fans treat LeBron having, I don't even remember how many finals losses at this point, as some sort of like failure. And it's like, you do realize that the reason it is impressive, like it is actually very impressive to lose in the finals than it is to like lose in the second round. But for some reason we lionize second round exits for MJ because he went 6-0 in the finals. Okay, yeah, but like he lost those years, right? Like, it's not better to lose in the second round than it is to lose in the finals.
The most like dude bro annoying opinion that I have about virtually all American sports is that like I do kind of believe in the clutch gene a little bit. However,
not in basketball though.
I think the real LeBron, yes, there is, but I also think that LeBron being in it most years for that period is like, that's not like a knock, you know what I mean? And
he made the finals 8 years in a row.
But also, part of the reason why LeBron has so many finals losses is because he has extended his career and the successful part of his career for a very, very, very long time. And I think that that's part of it. You know what I mean? Being in there and showing up and being there and sustaining it over a long period of time is an advantage. And you can't try to make it. I feel like the 6-0 in the finals is kind of emblematic of the fact that they're like, well, he just got in. He like either dominated or didn't. But it's like, I think when you're arguing in terms of like quote unquote greatness, first of all, in team sports, I don't know. There just is there is and never will be an answer. But and also like sports are always moving forward. So it's like it's always going to be a new modern person, but at the same time, like it's just I don't know, whatever. It's a stupid argument, but I do think in terms of greatness, the ability to sustain it over the period of time that LeBron James did is kind of a checkmate factor.
Yeah, of course. But like for me, it's like, I'm sorry, would it be better if Charles had come P2 in Monaco 2021 or Baku 2021 or Baku 2023 or any number of Charles's late 2023 polls? Like, would it have been better if he qualified P2 somehow? Because at least it wouldn't be a poll that he didn't get.
No, it turned like being really like, here's the thing. Anyone who watched that season knows that was simply Charles Leclerc putting that car where it had no fucking business being. Like, we don't shit on Nico Hulkenberg for qualifying P4 in a Haas and then dropping back. We all understand what we're watching here. It's willful misunderstanding. First of all, these people know
right.
it. And second of all, it's or you just didn't watch, because anyone who was watching knew that Ferrari had no business being anywhere close to the front of the grid. And to anything, it just speaks to the fact that Charles Leclerc is really, really, really good at qualifying, which when it comes to the point that you have a world championship car, particularly when you're going to have to be really competitive with your teammate, the ability to qualify well is essential and is equally as important as your racing skills. And people try to discount that ability a lot. I think it's like, oh, well, he just qualified on pole. It's like, that is part.
Single lap pace is a very important part of this.
It's part of
actually. This is a great transition into our biggest question, 2025 big question, because my big question for 2025 is, can Lewis Hamilton find any fucking single lap pace again? Because as you know better than me, and I'm opening the door for you to do, Lewis Hamilton has been terrible over a single lap this year. Objectively was trash. Now you can blame the car and you can blame this and you can blame that and whatever. It's not the car's fault that you screw up both of your push laps in Las Vegas. It's not the car's fault that you qualify P18 that ends up becoming P16 with some grid penalties or whatever. Like, but specifically in Ferrari played the team orders game a lot more than Mercedes does, right? Which is to say Mercedes basically never plays them, except in situations where you have drivers, where you have a driver going long on hard tires and you have a driver coming through.
No problem with team orders when there is an obvious, we all understand what's going on with the tires, right? When there's an obvious differential like that, you are like wasting those. We're not going to waste the tires. Like that's
right. Exactly. And in those situations, like honestly, George and Lewis got so good in those situations where they barely even needed the radio message. The like 4 times it happened.
Right. And I also think that like, that's something that the way it gets murky with team orders is when it is not clear and objective and fair about, okay, this is the situation. It's black and white. When this happens, this will be the output, regardless of who is in what seat. And I think that the tire differential is one of those areas where it can be very black and white. I feel like that's why you don't really see them getting bothered about it, because it's
Lewis doesn't like Miami 2023 is the great example, right? Lewis qualified like 13th. George started like 6th. So Lewis is going on a hard tire. George is starting on a medium. George pits. He ends up behind Lewis because Lewis stayed out long, right? Lewis moves over. He doesn't make it an issue. Very clear. Like, I've listened to both of their radios. Bono barely had to tell him what to do, right? Like,
well, yeah,
it was just a mechanical. But I want to make this point, right? Ferrari played the team orders game at a very different level than Mercedes does, right? They fuck around with team orders. They're telling you not to fight at pit exit. They're trying to, you've got drivers begging for team orders. Well, mostly Carlos Sainz begging for team orders. Anytime somebody's slower or faster, or you think you have more pace, and you're just beside each other on track. But if Lewis is really going to be in a team where team orders are more imposed, he's got to qualify better, or he's just going to be told to sit down and shut up and support Charles.
No, the Ferrari team order situation is such a problem because it's so murky that it's not black and white like that. There is a problem anytime someone is behind someone else. They're fundamentally, the way it looks to me from the outside, is that every time they are next to each other on track, Ferrari has to make a random decision about what they're going to do. You know what I mean? The other person, they're like, okay, the other person behind is like, okay, I'm faster. But like, irregardless of like saving their tires, or somebody is lifting coasting and somebody isn't, like all of these things, they're like, all right, we're going to make a decision right now about what to do. And it's because it's every time. And it's not like, okay, if this is the situation, then this is what will happen. It's a shit show. And in my opinion, Carlos benefited from it a lot more than Charles did.
Well, partially because Charles mostly didn't really ask for team orders. He just drove. Right. And he didn't make a fight about it. Like that is absolutely part of Charles's problem when it comes to team orders in specific, is that like it's Carlos on the radio begging for team orders. It's Carlos on the radio, telling him. Charles, and I think it's fair to say at this point that it's Carlos saying to Fred Vasseur, hey, can we put Charles on soft tires to jump George Russell at the start in Singapore and then back him the fuck up so that I can win this race with no competition? Like, well, it's not Lewis isn't going to ask those things. And I think that is key for Charles. But I also think, like, dude, if you're going to have a more of a fair fight, you have to qualify better.
No, yes, definitely. But no, I don't think Carlos is in there being like dictating like that. But it is this, like, there is a James Vowles of Ferrari who is like overseeing this strategy and both race engineers and like what choices we're all going to make. And I just feel like Ferrari, there really is they need to just let them fight unless there's a clear tire differential, or like if one of them has a problem or something like that. B, one person is in contention for the championship and one person isn't. And those are the only two situations in which team orders should be applied, because they're both very quantitative, and very obvious and black and white, and can be enforced across the board. And my take on the Ferrari brand of team orders has always been that you are causing more problems for yourself than you're solving, because ultimately Lando's race engineer was right when they were telling him to give it back to him in Monza. Like, because the only reason he got pitted first, he was behind. By the rules, they broke the rules to save him from Lewis Hamilton. So if he doesn't pay Oscar back and unbreak the rules, essentially, the whole thing is going to fall apart, and you may need those rules down the line.
And he did need those rules down the line to get him ahead of Oscar in Brazil and in the Brazil sprint race. Like, and to have Oscar keep his position, not jump Lando in Coda, because don't forget, Lando did not actually have a 5-second buffer when that penalty came in. He needed Oscar to build a gap behind him. So the Lando's 5 or 10, I don't remember how many seconds of penalties he got for the Max stuff
ended up being the situation. Yeah, whether or not like if Lewis can,
Lewis needs to qualify better. I don't know. I think we'll see. Like I
think that is the question, right? Because if Lewis keeps qualifying P8, P9, P12 in this Ferrari, that looks like it's going to be one of the most competitive cars. I mean, Charles won the second half of the season. Like Charles got the most points from Hungary onwards. Basically, no matter how you slice it, whether it's you do last 8, post-summer break, last 12 races, Charles won the season. And if the Ferrari is going to be competitive next year, and I think it is, if Lewis keeps qualifying like shit, it's Charles' championship easy. Because Ferrari will impose more team orders that help the front-running car than Mercedes was ever willing to do. And they are going to prioritize their lead driver if he's in a title fight. And if Charles comes out of the gates, I mean, Charles has won Australia before. He has won Bahrain before. You know, he has put up good performances in Jeddah.
I think
if Lewis qualifies badly, I think he could be the number 2 driver by the start of
Monaco. We get it. Obviously, if Lewis Hamilton qualifies P15, he's gonna that will be that, and he will be the number 2 driver. I think he'll get it together in qualifying. I mean, we'll see, but like
lap pace tends to go before race pace.
Okay, and like I think that he has not. He just did like I think that Lewis Hamilton has shown in the past that he has the ability to be resilient. I think that we will see. I think that yes, Lewis Hamilton didn't do good in qualifying this year. I don't think that necessarily means he's doomed forever. I think we will see. If I had to put money on it, I would put money on that he was good. I do think that Charles will out-qualify him because I think that Charles Leclerc is currently the best qualifier on the grid. And
do you at least agree that George is number 2 on that list?
No, I think Max is number 2. But I also think part of the Lewis situation is that George is better than we give him credit for. And also I think that Lewis is fundamentally unhappy with that car. I think it's half the car.
But we can't keep saying, oh, he's unhappy with that car, but then also below him for how quick his race pace is. Like, okay, is it that he hates the car? Because if he hates the car, he doesn't come from P16 to P4 yesterday.
No, I think that you have to dial it in far more for qualifying than you do to, I think he just has struggled to truly get in tune with this car. I think he's a little bit checked out at Mercedes, and I think that we will see next year. I mean, is it possible?
But even in 2023, this terrible season for George, where Lewis beat the shit out of him in points and whatever, it was 11-11 in qualifying head-to-head, and George beat him through in sprint qualifyings. There is clear slippage in Lewis's single lap pace.
Sure. Okay.
Red Bull, here's your question. Sergio Rodriguez, who's a believe a Mexican based F1 reporter, he has officially, well, not officially, he has reported.
Not become you, by the way. Like, we get it. Lewis Hamilton hasn't been qualifying well. I don't think he's gonna be as miserable as he is this year. And I think that everyone being like, it's just your George propaganda. Like, George is good, okay? Like, we get it. It's Jenson Button beat Lewis too. Nobody's out here like Jenson Button's a better driver than Lewis Hamilton.
I'm not saying that George Russell is a better driver than Lewis Hamilton. I'm saying that George Russell might be a better driver than 39-year-old Lewis Hamilton.
No, and I do think, listen, I think that Charles
Charles is a better driver than modern Lewis Hamilton. I don't think Charles is a better driver than peak 2017 or 2018 Lewis.
But I also think that, I don't necessarily, I think that peak Lewis happens when, Lewis Hamilton was a far quote unquote better driver in 2007-8 than he was in 2011-12. But that's because not only was the McLaren car worse, but it wasn't that much worse, but they were still competitive, but he was clearly outperforming and he was frustrated and struggling with the car, and he kind of he went crazy in 2011. It's honestly amazing to watch, and he did so well considering the state of things. But like, I think it has been like, you can't be like, oh, I think it's in F1 and with Lewis especially, I think that this situation matters, right? Like Seb did really bad in 2020, but then did amazing the next year. You know what I mean? And people don't say that because Aston Martin was bad, but I feel like getting points consistently in that Aston Martin, getting 2 podiums is like a genuinely very impressive achievement that nobody watching 2020 Seb would have considered possible.
But again, I'm not saying that Lewis isn't gonna, like, I would look before this season, right? A prominent US sports book offered odds on all of these guys to win races, right? I made some money betting these props, right? I'll bet Lewis to win 2 races next year. If they offer me Lewis over 1.5 race wins, I'll bet it. I think Charles is going to win like 8 because, frankly, I think Charles is going to win the WDC.
Me too.
This is my thing. I don't think Lewis is like that level of driver. And I think comparing 2011-12 Lewis to 2024 Lewis ignores a very clear thing, which is that he's old and age comes for everybody at some point. Anyways, I would like to move on to Red Bull because you and I are just having the same fight that I think you and I have had every single time we have been on. You have come on my podcast, which is to say that you think that Lewis will lock the fuck in when he has an elite car, and I have my doubts.
You're a hater and a loser, of which there are many, and I
will just say that in fairness, it would make a lot more sense for me to pretend that Lewis Hamilton is still as fast as he was in 2020 for my George agenda. I would just like to point this out because that would make George beating him more impressive.
That's true. But but the qualifying stat makes George look very good. But if the reason that George is at qualifying him is that Lewis is washed, then no, it doesn't make him look impressive. It makes it look impressive if you act like, no, I think Lewis is great. I just have very real concerns because I think Charles is like, I honestly think Charles is that guy. Whatever. We've argued about this plenty. This has been fun. Can we continue with the bit now, please? Yes, I'm so sorry, but I just want to clarify that I do think that Charles will beat him probably a lot because I think that Charles is a fucking amazing qualifier. He's also, when it comes to racing, like I would be very interested to see the two of them go wheel to wheel. However, I do think that this will get together in qualifying enough, but I do agree that that is a definite advantage for Charles.
Yeah. And again, if you're Lewis, one of the things in the Ferrari culture you try and change, if you have any ability to, would be a reduction in the amount of team orders. So Sergio Rodriguez, who I believe is a Mexican reporter, has reported Liam Lawson to Red Bull, Isaac Hadjar to RB, Checo Perez out.
Justice for Yuki Tsunoda. Justice for Yuki Tsunoda.
No. Fuck Yuki Tsunoda. Like, I'm sorry, he's in his 4th season. If they thought he was anything, they would have promoted him already. They haven't. I trust that judgment.
What else does he need to do? He beat all of them. He was just never in consideration.
I mean, he got bitch slapped by Pierre pretty consistently.
Okay, and so by the transitive property of equality, I just don't like. Has Liam done like he? They were like, if the rumor was that if Liam showed Red Bull, like what has Liam showed Red Bull in the last 6 races that Yuki has not shown?
He went from back of the grid to the points at Coda. He qualified in Q3 in Brazil. Helmut Marko clearly thinks that he is incredibly talented, and he's doing all of this in less than I think in potentially 10 races. Oh, and by the way, he beat Yuki in qualifying, I think 4-0 last year in last year's RB. Oh,
Okay,
and
so that
he is the only RB driver to have qualified to have out qualified Max Verstappen 2 times in the last 2 seasons. Because
okay.
don't forget, he knocked Max out of qualifying in Singapore last year.
Okay, Max was suffering deeply, but
Just
no,
saying, he's outqualified him twice. Yuki has outqualified him once, and Yuki's had like 4 extra races.
fine. I still think that Yuki is a better choice, but I cede you that point. Fine. I feel. I mean, the check like. I feel
Checo needs to fucking go. Anyways, the big question for Red Bull this season is the last 4 race revival real, or are they going to be the car that they were in Singapore and Zandvoort and Monza, where they're sort of like vaguely competitive if you get the right track, or are they much more like the car they have been in Vegas, but even more so Qatar, in Abu Dhabi? Like, do we think that they're really in contention for like fastest car depending on the circuit, or do you think they're sort of a step back, closer to that Mercedes tier of like competitive on a good weekend but not going to be competitive most of the time?
I could really see yes, I think next year I can really see it being a situation where there are several teams that could be the fastest team or could be, part of that front group competing for pole on a given weekend. And the way if I had to make a prediction, I would say that it's going to be Ferrari and McLaren are going to be like the quote unquote fastest teams. And then please, sorry. I don't trust Ferrari to like not make silly operational mistakes. However, I think like the Red Bull and Mercedes will be right behind them. I could even see like that group, like it changing around in that group of 4. But I feel like that group of 4 is going to be very close next year, specifically because we're coming into 2026. So I don't think anyone's going to do anything like that crazy. But I also think that Red Bull was clearly floundering in the absence of Adrian Newey. And they somewhat got their shit together by the end of the year. But at the same time, did they get their shit together, or did the other teams just stop developing and or like struggle more as well? You know what I mean? But and also I think that Max Verstappen is, we have to do like -2 or 3 on any position that he was on the grid, in terms of like he is hiding, I think, a lot of the problems with that car by being Max Verstappen. So when I said talking about them being competitive, I think the car will be definitively 4th amongst that group, but I feel like Max will be in the mix because it's Max.
You think the Red Bull, sorry. You think the Red Bull's going to be worse than Mercedes next year?
They're not I think that there are fundamental culture problems and a rift within that team. I think that as much as the minute Adrian Newey went to Red Bull, everyone got on the very subtle Adrian Newey is actually not that good propaganda train.
Oh, that's so stupid. Adrian Newey dragging the 2016, 17, 18, 19 Red Bulls to race winning capacity is actually legitimately more impressive than what he did in the Seb Vettel era or in the Max Dominance era.
Yeah, like
dragging the Renault engine to a race winning car is the most impressive thing that man has ever done.
For real, it's more impressive than any World Constructors Championship. I know we're both thinking of that same tweet that was like, he got dogged by Mercedes for however many years. And I'm like,
Fucking
it just,
Christian Horner used to be on the pit wall like every third week on Sky. And if you go back and just watch, like, pick any random race from the Red Bull Renault engine era, and Horner might just be on commentary, and he's just like in fifth and just being like, yeah, if we had a better fucking engine, we'd be at the front.
and
But we
also
don't have the engine.
the most fun part of it.
And then Brundle just goes, hey, so do you want to just do race commentary for like 3 laps? And Horner's like, yep, that's great. Cool. And Horner was fantastic. This is why I hate that Horner is like a predator and a scumbag, because I don't think there's a single team principal who is smarter about F1 than Christian Horner. I actually think he is the best team principal on the grid, and it fucking sucks that he's a sex pest
Oh,
and a misogynist, because if you just go back and watch like a 2017 or 2018 race where Red Bull are 5 and 6 and like very clearly above everybody else, but very clearly behind Ferrari and Red Bull, and he's on the pit wall, he'll just do 3 minutes of like, well, if I were Ferrari, I would, I'd use Kimi to fuck them over or whatever. And it's like, oh shit, that's really smart. And it's some of the best commentary you'll ever hear in any sport ever. And it's like, why do you have to be a scumbag?
no, honestly, it's I don't want to say like I don't even really care about him being a misogynist, because obviously I've made a zillion videos about that, and it was really and I'll shit on him for all day and twice on Sunday, but like they all at the end of the day, most of the men that are team principals, and really they all think that women only watch F1 because men are hot. Like, I understand the premise that I bought into, but yeah, like it like him being a workplace, it ruins everything. Him being a fucking workplace predator, because it's like, well, no, now you're like actually bad and harmful, and like you need to be, in my opinion, drawn and quartered. However, it is the team principals are all straight out of Central Casting. Like, and it's so funny because I know this one guy who's like he's American, but he grew up here, but his one of his parents, his mom, is like upper class in England, which means they're royalty, like somehow, but like not really, one of those, like they all have different titles. It's like a lower one or whatever, but they're fancy British people, as I call them. And the way he's like, Christian Horner is a like social climbing, like all like slimy weasel. And I'm like, AKA the perfect person to run a Formula One team. Please stop being a creep. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think the thing for me about Red Bull in general, because I do want to pivot this back, is like, do we think that I actually think we're gonna have a really good comparison. So I think you and I both agree it's probably Ferrari, McLaren 1, 2 in some order, right, next year, in terms of pure car performance.
Please.
But so if we think Red Bull and Mercedes are 3, 4, who do we think scores more points, Kimi Antonelli or Liam Lawson? Because I think that actually is a pure expression of pure car ability, as opposed to the George Max. Because let's be real, I think George is great. I don't think George is as good as Max.
Kimi, for sure. I think Max is overcompensating so much. Like, I think that Max Verstappen, and also Max Verstappen, because his dad raised him in like a freaky F1, like he's Jason Bourne, but instead of like, or no, there were spy novels. What was it called, where this guy was like raised by his uncle to like be a spy? He was raised like that to be an F1 driver. He has a unique ability to, or not unique, but it's far more developed than a lot of other drivers, especially newer ones, where he can like drive any car and can deal with it, like problems better when they arise, because he was like forced to practice. So and like I think that he is, and also that he's just really, really, really good, that he is overcompensating for the struggles that car has.
I will say the last time we recorded, I think was right after Zandvoort, and I was like, is Lando Norris going to win the championship? And part of my rationale was like, the Red Bull is so bad at this point that like Merc are going to get ahead of him. The Ferrari are going to be ahead of him. He's going to have so many like P5, P6, P7 finishes, right? This motherfucker was on the podium and he dragged himself to the podium so many times in cars that I think were legitimately third or even potentially fourth best on the grid, right? Like, Max did such a good job in maximizing the performance. I think the car might be so bad next year that he doesn't have the ability to win the championship again. Like I would bet pretty firmly against him winning the championship next year. But I think the question is like, did they find something at the end of the year, or is everything or was that just sort of like a luck of the tracks that were there, getting wet weather in Brazil? That'll be interesting.
I think the end of the year was Max for sure.
Yeah. I'm just gonna do this because I don't really want to like write about it for your site or anything, but can we just agree that Max that the people who were defending Max during this kerfuffle with George being like, oh, he honors trust and honesty, he just doesn't like two-faced people. He supported Christian Horner and said that the reason that he wanted this shit dealt with, the very credible accusations of Horner being a sex pest, was because it would hurt the team. He defends his father, who once ran over his mother with a car.
Okay, out of bounds. I feel like we don't talk about the Jos Verstappen has run over multiple people with cars out of respect to the victims involved and to Max Verstappen himself. Like, we can't talk about the Jos Verstappen thing. I get what you mean. I don't even think you need
No. I'm not done. I'm not done the list of people that Max Verstappen defends who are all terrible.
I just made a Nelson
Piquet. He defends his surrogate father, Helmut Marko, who has repeatedly said racist things about his literal fucking teammate, Checo Perez, and claiming that he's not good enough to, he's not on Max's level because he's a Mexican. He defends Nelson Piquet, his father-in-law, despite the fact that Nelson Piquet called Lewis Hamilton an Eder. And if you would like to say, oh, but that's family, see what Checo Perez said when Checo's father called, I don't even remember what the context was. Do you remember who Checo's father called a homophobic slur?
Lewis, I think.
Oh, wow, great, yeah. No, so apparently you can criticize your parents.
Well, Nelson Piquet also said that the only reason that Nico Rosberg won in 2016 is because he was fucking Lewis. So that's also awesome.
Yeah, no. So Max, look, you could like Max Verstappen. I understand that in this game that we call fandom, that you sometimes support dishonorable people, or you support people who support dishonorable people. But this notion that, oh, Max only supports the best people and George has somehow crossed some immutable line for Max. Go fuck yourself. Because Max Verstappen supports a hell of a lot of scumbags. And those scumbags are useful to him. So spare me your righteous motherfucking indignation.
My thing about Max is like, your relationships, your private relationships are your business. But like, I think the Sergio Perez thing really said it all. Like, I thought it was very classy the way he handled it. He was like, like, it's my dad, and like, I'm not going to say anything about my dad, but like, I think using that language is wrong. And I think that like whatever. And he apologized to Lewis. And I thought that, I was like, damn, like, that is how you do it. For all of those things as well. But like, ultimately, I do think that bringing it to a place of like, who is the better person is just a exhausting way to do things. And also it just very quickly warps into like this, like, weaponizing what is like kind of serious things to like win a point over like the Charles Pole conversion stat. And it's like,
that's like really maybe what we shouldn't be doing here. But
And also, if we want to play these games, none of these people are going to come out particularly well.
Right. And also, like, Formula One is a sport built by billionaires for the express purpose of money laundering. So, like, there is that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I avoid this. Like, I try to avoid this like the plague with golf, because it's like I am under no pretext that Jordan Spieth, my favorite golfer, is some like good moral Democrat or whatever. But like, hey, he's never donated to a Republican candidate.
And
all I have going for me at this
but
point.
I also think like it's not that like I avoid it. Like I not love, but like I will always talk about these things. I'll always bitch about them. I'll always be a bitch. Like this is on God. I will make a video every single time I see Nelson Piquet's face in the paddock being like, fuck this motherfucker. He should be banned from Formula One. However, I think that it's more productive. And I will always go after like the structures and the institutions of Formula One. Like I love F1 Crime Corner, but ultimately I think that by calling out and like not like punishing is the wrong word, but by like making clear that the behavior is not appropriate in real time, and like Nelson Piquet was forced to apologize, and it was the worst apology ever, but like at least they didn't ignore it. You know what I mean? Like the FIA could have done nothing, like they always do nothing. So like, and that was, I feel like, because all of the drivers came out and were like, no, like you actually, like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? And I feel like that, not to like, that doesn't, whatever, fuck Nelson Piquet forever. That doesn't mean like it was a good situation. But I do feel like that shows that like, I feel like in the moment when we make clear what is okay and not okay, like that's like more of a win than like bringing it up to like win some kind of argument, and also to prove that like you're a more like moral fan than I just, that to me is a very boring way to engage with fandom. And I think that you can think critically about things and criticize your faves in both a serious and like in sporting manner without having to be, and because I feel like those kind of arguments encourage people to not criticize the things that they're fans of so that they can sit upon that high horse. And I think that being able to be critical of the things you love and to think critically like that, I've said the word critical too many times, but that is really important. Sorry.
Yeah, there's also a reason I haven't like tweeted particularly. I mean, I think I tweeted one time about it, but like, I understand that like most F1 fans are in a glass house because frankly, most of their drivers have, unsavory things or whatever, but like, I don't know. I feel like we touched on McLaren's big question, which is like, are they a true 2 number 1 driver team, or is Lando just gonna like scamper out ahead of Piastri? I think we already did that.
Yeah, it's just like I think that will 100% depend on performance.
Yeah.
I hope that they're competitive next year. I'm rooting for Oscar. I am.
Oscar, theoretically, Australia, Bahrain, Saudi as your first 3 races of the year or whatever. Like, if I'm right that Piastri is going to continuously be a better driver at the tracks that he's driven more and more, like, that's not a bad start to the season. I don't know if he's driven Albert Park that many times, but like, I think he knows Albert Park about as well as he could. And in fairness, he would have beaten Lando at Albert Park last year if they didn't team orders him behind him. I'm just saying.
Listen, we'll see, but
yeah, I don't think we need to rehash the McLaren conversation because
we have talked about them at length.
Right, exactly. I have 2 other teams that I find interesting enough to have like a big question for. Williams is one of them. Is Alex Albon fraud watch going to be like one of the leading topics next year? Because obviously Carlos Sainz is showing up. It has been Franco Colapinto and more so Alex Albon, or not Alex Albon. Fuck, what's his name? Frat boy.
Logan.
Florida. Logan Sargent. Thank you very much.
I can't believe you can't remember his name.
I've had 3 drinks while we're recording this podcast. Okay, so bite me. Look at Sargent. Oh, Latifi. Was Latifi his teammate? Yeah, Latifi was his teammate that first year. Jesus Christ.
I'm very the Williams driver matchup. I think is among the most interesting. It's probably the number one I'm most interested in is Lewis and Charles. I feel like that is.
I think it's Lewis Charles number one. I think it's McLaren number two.
Oh yeah, no, I think Williams is second for me. McLaren. I just don't think.
Well, yeah, because you don't believe in Piastri. I believe in Piastri more than you. So I think
on his 46th race as opposed to his 45th, he's suddenly gonna have enough experience to drive.
I just think. I made my case earlier in this podcast.
You know, you're right. Sorry, we don't need to.
Right, because the thing is, like Max, I don't find Max is gonna like 22-2 Liam Lawson next year, right, or some shit like that.
Yeah,
George is presumably gonna kick the shit out of Kimi Antonelli, right?
The only person that could beat Max is another Golden Boy. Like,
right?
He is
like Lawson. Here's the thing: if Lawson was really that good, he A would have won F2. Or B gotten an F1 seat before now, right?
Right, like
so I don't have high expectations for Lawson. And like Antonelli, if George doesn't kick the shit out of Antonelli, I'm selling all of my George Russell stock next year.
I do think that Max. I think that George will beat him as well. I think that and listen, I feel like I'm being mean to Oscar. I hope he beats Lando. I feel like he will be more competitive. But the Williams one, to me, it's an interesting question mark to me because we've
had no baseline for what Albon is.
There is no like expectation that we can extrapolate based on past events. So I'm really extremely curious, and I feel like we rarely get as interesting of a baseline as this. You know what I mean?
No, for sure, and that's why it's so fascinating. Because the other thing is that some drivers are good at driving fast cars, right? And I think to some extent, and this is such a stupid comparison, I know, don't yell at me, but Lewis is not as good at driving midfield cars as George Russell, right? We saw it at the beginning of 2022 when the Merc was shit. We saw it at the beginning of this year when the Merc was shit, right? Like, some people can maximize the most out of any car, and some people can only really drive fast cars. And I think there's a totally universe where Sainz is like this piece of shit.
No,
I'm just not able to maximize it.
For Rosso, Carlos has spent a lot of time in the midfield. McLaren.
Was he particularly good at any of those spots?
I mean, he's always been solid. Like, I don't think Carlos Sainz is a bad driver. Like, I think he's a good driver. I put him in the league of the Mark Webbers of the world, the Bottas's of the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but the problem is that he has an ego of a number one driver and the talent of a number two at a top team, right?
Problem is the evil trio of Carlos is scuttling around behind the scenes, and also the Spanish media. But although I do feel like the Italian media is nothing. All of the tabloids are a problem, but they clearly.
Briefly, while we're talking about the Italian media, how quickly, if Lewis qualifies like P16, how quickly before the Italian tabloids start being incredibly racist towards him?
God. Okay, I have to be so honest with you. I am so worried about this. Like, I'm so worried about. And everyone's gonna be like, America's all right. Like, I'm scared to voice it because I know I don't even want to speak it into existence, but I'm so scared people are gonna be like incredibly racist toward Lewis. But
the worst possible outcome is Charles P1, Lewis like P9 at Monza next year. It will be this is the same country that that made monkey noises towards black soccer footballers who weren't playing well enough. I am deeply worried.
I really hope. I really hope that the Tifosi and the bulk of, because unfortunately there are just always people that are going to be racist, like that just like is the case, especially on the internet. But I really hope that even the most diehard like Fosi really don't stoop to that level, and like that it doesn't become like a prominent issue, that like something that like Lewis has to be talking about, because like that's so frustrating.
I think the internet discourse will be fine. I think I think like literally the Italian tabloids might call him a monkey if he finishes a race like P9.
And I hope that they will be burned at the stake for it. You can't that like you like is that level of like
the thing is, we've seen what fans did at Juventus and Roma and the two Milan clubs.
I
The
don't
black footballers who weren't performing up to expectations.
I have to be honest with you. I do not actually know what Juventus is up to. If I'm being totally transparent here,
There has been very, very bad racism scandals at basically at most of the high level Italian clubs, and like I think it is an absolute concern to me.
Don't you think
that Lewis is going to get deeply unfair criticism next year if he doesn't perform up to the standard of Charles?
Do you like? I mean, but like the British media has improved in like. I mean, listen, I'm not going to say that they're not racist. That would be absolutely crazy. However, there has been a marked improvement since the beginning of Lewis's career.
Yeah,
like,
but that's because he is British.
Right, but like it's not like the German tabloids are like that's crazy. I'm not saying that they're not going to be. Well, here's the thing. I think that they're going to be pro Charles regardless. They're going to be on the side of whoever is better, because those are the people that truly, truly, truly only care about Ferrari.
Yeah,
but I have faith in the Italians to not be more racist than the rest of Europe and America, which is to say,
I think if we're 6 rounds into the championship and Charles is in P1 or P2 and Lewis is in P6, I think we're going to be in hell.
I hope that is not the case.
I hope it's not the case, mostly because I hope Lewis is doing better than them.
I also hope that we're.
Because frankly, I don't think Mercedes is going to be any good next year. Respectfully, I don't. Like, I think you are overly optimistic about Mercedes and thinking that Red Bull is really the 4th best car next year.
Right, maybe Mercedes will be 4th, and it'll be like Ferrari, McLaren, Red Bull. Well, and by Red Bull I mean Max, and then then Mercedes. I feel like that is the most likely alignment. However, I think that all of those people are going to be much closer than the gaps have been in previous years, and there's going to be a lot more variation, track to track, climate to climate.
Like, yeah, I think George can. If George has a great season, I think he can win 3 times. And if he has a good season, he wins 2. And if he has a bad season, he wins 1 or 0. I think that's fine. But like, so I think to go back to Williams, which is where this segment originally started. Do we think Albon's going to get exposed as a fraud, or do we think he actually is going to step up when the competition gets hard?
I think he's going to step up.
Well, I'm a George Russell fan, so therefore, by proxy of his friendship, I am an Alex Albon stan. I hope that's correct.
Mostly just because I want it. We don't know. I just feel like there's no benchmark. Like, I genuinely have no idea. I feel like both of them are good drivers, but I don't. And I just am rooting for Alex, I guess.
Yeah, I
really had like. If I'm so convinced that Alex, I have no fucking idea what's going to happen.
Now, the other part of this, of course, is that I have had like this season has gone so badly for Williams, so many crashes, so much expenses. Like, it's been very unclear whether Williams' quote unquote relative drop off in performance is that, or literally just that they don't have the like literal ability to manufacture the new parts they have built, and so they're going back to old spec. Like, who the fuck knows, right?
Well,
I think Williams are a total black box.
I think by the end they were driving like Frankenstein cars. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. And so, like, I don't know what to take. Like, they were significantly bad in Vegas, where they were, they locked out the third row last year. But it's like, do they even have the parts anymore? Like, I don't fucking know, and I don't even think
the fact that they were able to get their shit together for the end of the season like that is like, at least to be able to like get a car is promising of like the infrastructure of that team. However, I feel like there's no real way to assess, and I have I think that Carlos is I would even say like a very good, like, he's good, but obviously, like, I think Charles is better than him, but I also think Charles is like amazing, and so I hope Alex will prevail, but I just feel like there's no real facts to bring in a case either way.
I'm not going to pretend I have like a strong opinion about Williams. The last team that I find fascinating, again, I don't think Mercedes is particularly fascinating, because it's just like, if George doesn't beat the shit out of Kimi, then we're in trouble.
To see from Mercedes, the question I have for Mercedes is like, are they going to do the same thing they've done for the last 2 years, which is like sort of figure it out toward the end of the season, and then, or at like a couple points, and then like regress immediately at the beginning? Or
I think they're just going to pump all of their focus into 26, and I honestly feel extremely confident that they are going to be the fastest car in 2026.
That is a tragedy.
Absolutely the fuck not. I deserve a world champion as a fan.
No.
Yes.
I'm not rooting for George Russell. I don't care about him. I like him as a character in this Grand Play we're all watching. However,
if it's a Max v George 2026 championship, you have to cheer for me.
Yeah, because I don't want Max to win anymore.
Exactly. You need to protect. You need to protect your Zeb agenda.
I'm not going to manifest it being Max and George before Charles has at least 2 titles in the bank.
Do you have any? Why would on earth would you have any faith in a Ferrari in a new regs?
Correct.
No, my last one is Alpine. So, fun fact: who has scored more points in the back half of the season this year? Pierre Gasly or Checo Perez?
No, it's Pierre. I know. I've seen this on Twitter, I think.
Right. Is there a chance that Alpine just like really makes a step up, and they're like they are the Racing Point 2020 equivalent for 2025?
Yeah.
Am I crazy?
Yes. No, because of one man, and his name is Flavio Briatore. Like,
give Tripod his fucking fair due.
yeah, I also think Pierre is good. But I think they're going to have a moment. They're going to be like the top of the midfield, like where McLaren was for a while. Yeah, like the Aston Martin of it all. And do you think Adrian Newey is going to make do you think they're going to be good in 2026? Do you think Fernando Alonso is going to win another race?
Whether he'll win another race is really interesting to me, because he's going to be like, what, 44 in 2026? Like, he's going to be really fucking old. And like, if you believe the Father Time does take something,
who's going to stop him? Lance Stroll? No, I think that we just
no, but like, I don't think the Aston will be the fastest car, because they fucked up. Aston Martin made a huge fucking mistake. If Aston still had the Mercedes engine in 2026 with Adrian Newey,
you're right.
they'd be arguably title favorites. But they
They
took the fucking Honda engine, and we have no idea if Honda knows what they're doing outside of the Red Bull family. But if they had kept their Mercedes contract, then yeah, I'd say absolutely Fernando's going to win a race. But
Why do I have any faith that a Honda engine outside of the Red Bull family knows what the fuck it's doing?
Well, they weren't. What did Red Bull? It was their engine first. Like they came in and did it. But yeah, no, I agree. And it's like right, because it's like no, that is crazy of them to do. But like also is like we don't really know that Mercedes is going to be the best engine yet.
I don't know, man. Alex Albon said that the reason that he re-signed was because of the Mercedes engine, and then Williams also gets Carlos Sainz.
All we know is that Mercedes is telling people that their engine is good.
But clearly enough people who have brains believe that to be true.
Lewis went to Ferrari, so
but okay, but here's the thing though. Lewis went to Ferrari because they gave him like a 3-year deal. Mercedes, like a 3-year deal and an ambassadorship that's worth like, literally 9 figures worth, right? Like it really seems.
If you think that Lewis Hamilton would actively choose to go somewhere where he doesn't have a chance to win, when he doesn't have a chance to win every single
But he didn't have a contract offer for 2026 at Mercedes.
He could have got, yes, he maybe wouldn't have gotten what he wanted, but he could have stayed at Mercedes. And I don't think that
not for 2026. 2026 was never on the table at Mercedes.
If Lewis thought that Mercedes was like 100% going to be the best in 2026, it was not like to think what he saw from Ferrari that they had a chance to compete. There's no way that money would have been a consideration for like that man hates losing so much.
No. Mercedes never offered the 2026 seat to Lewis Hamilton. Never. That never happened. They said
right, it's 1 year.
2025. That's it. Toto has confirmed this, and Chauvelin has confirmed this.
So says Toto Wolff now.
Also, and Andrew Chauvelin, and all of their reporting contemporaneously.
Okay, listen, I think that the Toto criticism is a bit overblown because like he did kind of get dumped, but also like Toto Wolff's story has changed 6 ways to Sunday. We don't know for sure. Maybe they did only want to offer him a 1-year deal. To me, it seems crazy to fire Lewis for Kimi Antonelli. However,
they were never gonna let Kimi Antonelli out of their sights, okay? Because they lost out on Verstappen, and remember the 20. No. Let me do this bit, okay?
Emerged after Lewis Hamilton chose to go to Ferrari. By the way, this is all Mercedes spin zone. Continue.
Sure. Remember the 2021 Spanish Grand Prix when Max 1 stops, Lewis 2 stops, and then Lewis kicks his shit, right? Since then, Red Bull has always been the team that 2 stops. Like legitimately, they have always 2 stopped because that Spanish Grand Prix has fucked with their brains to the extent where they have decided that they're always going to 2 stop. They 2 stopped in Brazil. In 2021, they 2 stopped in France in 2021. They have 2 stopped in a ton of races that were borderline because they were always going to be the first movers because they didn't want to get beat in the same way again. And Toto has a Max Verstappen style scar around the idea of this quote unquote generational talent, right? Because he didn't have a seat to give Max Verstappen, because when Max was coming up, he had Nico and Lewis, and so Toto was never going to let Kimi go. He was never going to lose him, and that can be right or that can be wrong. And I think that was, I think what you think about that decision is up for debate, but I do genuinely believe the idea that Mercedes was willing to let Lewis go. And frankly, we know from what the
I don't believe that.
If Mercedes had offered a 3-year contract in the ambassadorship, Lewis would still be driving for Mercedes.
I think that they maybe weren't willing to pay him what they were willing to pay him, but to base this entire thing on like, well, oh, he was so obsessed with Max, like he couldn't let Kimmy go. That Toto Wolff's weird obsession with Max Verstappen began immediately after Lewis Hamilton left for Ferrari, and all of the information we have from this, like about this negotiation, comes from Toto Wolff. And like, so until I hear Lewis's side of the story, and I'm not saying Lewis would be 100% truthful either, but we need to kind of weigh those against each other. And I just think that, don't get me wrong, I think that they did clash over Lewis wanting 3 years and the ambassadorship and whatever, but to act like they were never, like if Lewis hadn't signed for Ferrari, he would have been out of a seat, I feel like is not, like Lewis may have had to capitulate on the ambassadorship. However, I do feel like Mercedes losing Lewis Hamilton as like a spokesperson for the brand is a catastrophic loss, and to act like it is that.
I'm not disagreeing that it is a catastrophic loss. I
Ferrari,
am saying that I don't think Mercedes AMG Petronas F1 team viewed Lewis leaving for Ferrari as a catastrophic loss.
No, I think Toto is big bad because Toto was playing hardball and he got totally blindsided.
Toto lost a game of poker. That can also be true. That is fully compatible with what I'm saying.
I mean, whatever. I don't even remember where this argument started.
Is Carlos Sainz going to be good at Williams? Was kind of how this started.
If you want to believe that.
Oh no! It started with me saying that like George needs to kick the shit out of Kimi Antonelli or by George, or I'm selling by George Stock. And then we ended up on Alpine. So here's my Alpine point, because let's return to this.
Oh, Flavia.
I kind of think honestly, can I express the topic? Can I express a potentially controversial opinion?
Sure.
Pierre Gasly, top 5 driver of this season.
Yeah, I think he's done really, really well. I mean, the drivers at Alpine have never been the issue.
No, of course not. And like I am not as big of a fan of Esteban as certain people are, but like I certainly think Esteban like deserves a seat on the grid. I think he's did a very good job this year. Obviously, that podium in Brazil. I mean, he held Max behind him for like 8-10 laps in Brazil. Like that's very impressive.
No, I think Esteban has
also Alpine
really outperformed that car for the duration of his stay at that team. Like in what has been objectively sustained over the last, how long has he been there? What, like 4 years? Yeah. One of the worst teams on the grid.
Hey, 2022, the car was good.
Yeah, that's true.
Fernando just had terrible reliability, or they would have come P4 in the constructors.
He's been quietly very solid at the back of the midfield, and occasionally he will pop through and get a podium.
No. Esteban's great. Pierre has beat him this year, which I think is very impressive.
Pierre did really, really well this year with very little.
And also, by the way, while P3, DNFing from a P3 start in Vegas.
Right. And yeah, like I do think that, right, exactly. The problem has never been the drivers. It's been that team is like a fucking shit show. And Flavio Briatore knows how to run a Formula One team.
Remember, you know who's supplying their engines 26, right?
Right. And that is a great move. And also, like,
Mercedes, for people who I was teeing you up for you to say Mercedes for people who don't know.
I think that like, right, like that's a good move. Like, I think you have to be, for some reason, comically evil you have to be plausible as the villain in a movie in order to win a Formula One World Championship. And like Flavio is the right person to steer that ship. Like Andrea, that's like, there's a reason that McLaren has done so well under Andrea Stella. Like he's a serious person. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying like I know who all these people are. I'm like the expert on that. However, I do think that it's not really like quantifiable to us because how the exact logistics of how these teams operate, it's all very shadowy and like slightly different and like the different departments and whatever. And there's a lot of factors at play and a lot of moving parts. But having the right people in key places is the only way to turn around your team, basically, historically.
Yeah, and I think Briatore is, I think, like he's a fascinating figure. I don't know how much 2025 is going to be significantly different for Alpine, although I think they do have a chance. I do think they have a chance to jump Aston next year. Although to be clear, I don't actually think Jack Doohan is particularly good as a driver. Where I think he's going to be a fascinating figure is with the Mercedes engine in 2026. I absolutely think they could recreate I literally said the name of this team.
Braun.
The team that's now Aston Martin. What the fuck were they in 2020?
Racing Point.
Racing Point. Thank you very much. I think they could totally recreate the Racing Point thing of like fairly consistent in Q3, occasional podiums. Like, I think, like, honestly, if I were Christian Horner and Helmut Marko, and I know why they're never going to do it, I would have put Pierre back in that Red Bull seat. 1,000%.
How did we get from point A to point B? I mean, that would be a crazy move. I don't hate it.
I think Alpine's going to be fast in 26. I think Pierre Gasly is really fucking good. I think he has shown he's really good in this Alpine. And I really, honestly, like, I know Gasly is this, like, I know he's this, like, joke of a character in the game that we call F1 at this point, because of the dick jokes and the doggy style and the tripod joke. But I honestly think that has all sort of led to us disrespecting Gasly as a driver.
I mean, maybe. I just don't. I used to be like, oh, like, I like him. All the incessant dick jokes, I was like, it's like when you laugh at a toddler's joke and they say the same joke over and over again. I was like, okay, we get it. You have a big dick. Like, also, anytime anyone is like, oh, like a man is like, oh, I'm great and better, I have a huge dick, I'm immediately just like, please, I just don't want to listen to anything else you have to say.
In fairness, what is Pierre Gasly's driver number?
10.
I'm just saying, if the nickname's Tripod and your driver's number's 10.
What does 10 have to do with having a big dick?
10 inches?
Oh. I mean, right. I don't care, and I find the need to proclaim that publicly to be off-putting.
In fairness, he was asked if he had a nickname. It's not like he brought it up in a media interview himself.
I know. I mean, listen, I'm not like, this is like a silly thing. Like,
the doggy style comment section is more disreputable than the tripod joke.
That was hilarious, but there were other incidences as well, if I remember, because I remember being like,
but the thing is, he's cleaned his act up. He's become more of a serious driver. I don't know.
I appreciate a man who takes feedback, and we did all shit on him for that, and he has never done it again. So I can respect the
honestly, we don't even get good shirtless selfies anymore, and it is photos dumps. Like, now, in fairness, he also has a girlfriend now. So maybe he's less interested in trying to get Instagram horny. I don't know.
I would like to say this. I respect the right to be slutty. I don't ever come across it that way.
You are a big fan of that very specific Lewis shirtless, gray sweatpants Instagram photo.
It's not even about that one picture. It's about the multiple photos every single day that Lewis Hamilton would post in that white bathroom, usually with his shirt off. And you know what? It was amazing. Like, it was unparalleled content, the likes of which the world will never see again, because we take ourselves too seriously. However, it's more what I find distasteful. It's like, if I, like, anytime you're like, oh, I'm so, like, talking about how big of a dick you have, like, are we in high school? Like, come on. And like, once again, the doggy style joke, it's very funny, but like, once again, it was kind of giving like, okay, like, the doggy style thing was funny, so I'm gonna be like, I fuck. Like, that was like the joke.
Like, the funny thing about the doggy style thing is that the original joke was great, which was that 2022 Monza where they didn't release the actual, because like half of the grid took grid penalties. Nobody could fucking figure out the starting grid.
Yes.
Right? Pierre, he just tweets like genuinely an innocent, tweet of like, what position am I fucking starting in tomorrow?
Yeah, and then someone says missionary, which is hilarious.
And he includes that tweet in his photo dump, and it's funny.
Well, no, but that's part of the whole thing, was Lewis logging onto his dog's Instagram account.
Right. But like,
to-
but his decision to include that in the photo dump was fine. It's the comment section that arrived afterward that is not that was too much.
It was very funny, but it was that he went on to, I can't remember any of the rest of them except for the tripod one, but I believe that there were like 2 or 3 of them.
There were more.
He kept like making jokes about it and stuff, and it was like to the point where it's like, okay, we know you, like, we get it.
We get it. You're horny. Shut the fuck up.
Right. Like, all right, enough. Like, that is, like, don't get me wrong. It was just a time and place. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, for sure. Do you have any takes on Haas, Steak, RB? Do you have you don't watch F2, do you?
Toro Rosso. First of all, my take on RB is that we all must call them Toro Rosso. Like, I'm done with.
I actually agree with you, and I'm sorry for failing this.
It's okay. I don't watch F2 because I'm simply not waking up 2 hours earlier than I need to on a Sunday. But I loosely follow along. But I also feel like F2 is like so crazy. But also, even before that, like, even when it wasn't, I do feel like it
seems like it's become a lottery of engine capacity and reliability that doesn't seem to particularly rely. Like, Ollie Behrman has somehow put up points in a Haas and also is like 9th in the F2 standings.
Well, it's because they're squeezing all the races into one weekend. So if you if you fuck yourself over, like, there's a bunch of factors that have contributed to it, but I also feel like you truly never know, even if someone is like a shining star in F2, like, there's always the chance that it's just not going to measure up when you, like, there's just no way of pitting that talent pool against the Formula One talent pool. But also,
what you're trying to say politely is that Mick Schumacher is also an F2 world champion.
Well, I was actually thinking about Nico Hulkenberg. I would never take a ricochet shot at Mick Schumacher in that manner, but he would also be an example.
But yeah, do you have a take on like Toro Rosso, Steak? I'm trying to think of the other teams we didn't talk about. Do you have a take on Haas? What the fuck is the Haas lineup? Ocon and Behrman. Do you have a take on any of those 3 teams?
I hope Ollie Behrman is good.
Yeah, I mean, Behrman feels like he is the most he feels like he has real George Russell-itis, which is that like he's gonna be in Haas until Lewis retires, like, because obviously Charles is not getting replaced by Ollie Behrman, but it feels like he might have a long time in Haas just waiting for Ferrari to replace him, because it feels like Charles and Behrman is the most likely obvious next pairing, right? At Ferrari,
I would let him go somewhere else but also we just never know. Like, I feel like if he does well in Haas for 1 to 2 years, if Lewis is still thriving in Ferrari and they want to keep him, he could go to like what I almost said Renault, Alpine, or like a Aston or some whatever. However, the cards fall in 2 years, who knows?
Yeah, I feel like that second Red Bull seat is gonna basically just be like a lottery every year of like who.
I feel like Red Bull is gonna fall off majorly.
Yeah, I think they might give Lawson 2 years just because like their car might not be good this year. But I honestly think like if Lawson isn't good, I think that the 2027 Red Bull seat might be like very, very again, depends on how they're going to do in the 26 regulations, but I kind of feel like the combination of not having a Merc engine and not having Adrian Newey, I kind of think we might be in like we might be in an extended Red Bull midfield era.
Yeah. I think that they're like I think that they're in like real trouble. And I also think that
okay, but do you think they're in real trouble because you would like them to be in real trouble because the two most important people of that team are a sex pest and a racist?
I mean, yeah, I would like to. I'm on the side of karmic justice and good and righteousness after I just did my whole rant about like not trying to make it a morality thing. But no, it's really not even about that. It's about the fact that, okay, not just Adrian Newey is left, Jonathan Wheatley also left, and there have been like a few announcements of departures. Now Hannah Schmitz is still there. However, and like obviously it's not just Adrian Newey, but I think, and there is also clearly major issues in that organization, not to use Jos Verstappen as a reliable source, but like he has been telling us the Horner Marco thing.
Anybody with a connection to Visa has been telling you this,
right? And so
can we just admit that sometimes your hashtag sources and your videos are me?
Yes, they are actually 100% of the time, not to sell you out, but yeah, I just think that is not the
I don't think they're going to recruit well in terms of the next generation of both drivers and like engineering talent.
Right. I think
also Lawrence Stroll seems to be willing to pay basically any price for anybody with any competence.
Right. And I also think that yeah, like they're clearly, and also the people like Dietrich Mateschitz, who was really the one who who was Helmut's like weirdly best friend, but also was like the force and like the originator of the project, died. So it's like how much will within the Red Bull organization itself, which also just is going through a power struggle because Red Bull was owned by, I know you know this, but for the people at home, Red Bull was owned by 50% of it was this guy in Thailand who Chalio Utivia, I think. Sorry if that's wrong. I also know I said the other name wrong too. I'm very sorry. But they started the company together. The Thai guy started it in Thailand. The Austrian guy was like, let me help you take this worldwide and market it. They founded Red Bull, right? They left it to their sons and they owned it 50-50 when they were alive. But the agreement was that when they passed it down to their sons, it would go 51% to the Thai guy. They are allegedly, apparently, according to the most unreliable sources on the planet, Team Horner. And and Helmut Marko is Austrian, so it makes sense that the Austrian guy would be Team Marko. They are also apparently, I can't imagine that it's out of a genuine concern for the accuser, but on her side.
Oh no, fuck no. They would no, they're pro accuser because they would like to get GTFO Christian Horner so they can replace Christian Horner with a pro Austrian side of the company.
Honestly, I don't I'm still anti-helmet Marco, make no bones about it, but like I don't care what your intentions are. I also would like them to succeed because I would like to see Christian Horner gone.
Not agreeing with you, not disagreeing with you on that, to be clear.
No, but yeah, all that to say, like, I'm not like saluting them because I don't think that their motives are like of like, you know, the same as mine, but at the same time, we are rooting for them. But they obviously lost because they only have 50% of the company. So, but also they can't have completely lost because like Marco's still there, you know what I mean? And ultimately, Liam getting the seat is what theoretically Marco wanted. And also it is like all of the driver moves have been to fortify the Red Bull driver program, which makes sense from a strategic perspective, but was allegedly not what I wanted to do because obviously the Red Bull
Horner wanted Daniel, Helmet wanted Liam.
Right, because he wants the Red Bull driver program where he feeds upon the souls of young people to stay alive forever, to continue to be important and an asset to Red Bull.
Right, exactly. And even as strong as Horner is still within the thing, he was only able to hold Danny Rick in that seat for so long. Do you have any other F1 take you would like to get off before we do this finish this podcast? Because I've honestly taken 2 hours of your time, and that seems unreasonable.
Let me think. What is going on recently? Make Nico Rosberg a full-time correspondent on Sky Sports, please.
I mean, Jensen feels like the actual Brundle replacement, right?
I do feel like Jensen is probably better for commentary. Nico, I think Nico is very good. I will say sometimes he is a little bit like you can tell he doesn't understand what Crofty is saying, which is like very understandable because Crofty speaks in riddles and English is Nico Rosberg's like 85th language. I think the fact that he has the ability to commentate and that I also feel like Jensen Button he's just much more neutral. And even in terms of like Nico Rosberg will like dive super into like the technical aspects of it. I love that. But like
Nico feels like this is also so offensive to say out loud. Jensen feels like new Brundle. Nico feels like new Paul DeResta, which is to say he does 6 races a year. It's sort of like fun when he shows up, but you don't really want Nico for 24 races a year.
How dare no,
the fact that Paul DeResta narrates one of my favorite races of all time is actually a war crime. Paul DeResta being on commentary for Russia 2021 is a war crime.
I cannot believe that Nico is great. And like his technical analysis is so good. If anything, I think that he should do a Ted's Notebook style situation, but really make it about like the ins and outs of like the cars, like really go into the McLaren wing thing. Like I want to hear him talk about development and like race setup at length. And sometimes
look, I agree with you. Nico's great. I'm just saying I don't want him for 18 races a year.
Oh, yes, I want him for 18 races a year.
No, I'd prefer Jensen. Look, Jensen for 18, Nico for 6 is better than Nico for 18, Jensen for 6.
No, I would pick Nico.
Jensen is better. Jensen is better at a holistic approach because the other part of this is that Nico just focuses on the 3 people that he really cares about, and then that's all he focuses on.
Well,
respectfully, the fact that Nico spent so much goddamn time in China talking about Lewis when there was like a whole race happening around Lewis Hamilton is.
I think in terms of commentary, I don't think that Nico's ultimate role should be commentator. I feel like he's good at it. It's impressive how good he is at it, given that doing that in live time as someone where English is literally your 3rd language is very impressive. But I feel like where Nico, he does, I agree with you, I think sometimes lose the forest for the trees. And with commentary, I feel like Jensen is a much more neutral. He just fits better in that role. Whereas I feel like Nico's role is in a Ted Kravitz in a pre-post race or pop in capacity. I feel like honestly he should have like a 1 hour morning show.
Would you like to spend the next 75 seconds writing about Danica Patrick?
It was watching them interact was so beautiful. He was like, no. I was like, oh my God, this is everything I ever wanted. I've actually been begging for them to be on coverage together. I've pulled together some clips for a compilation, but I'm like, I don't want to get Nico Rosberg in trouble for being mean to Danica.
No. In fairness, we need.
He's looking at her, I'm like literally crying. Like I love it so much, but like I'm like,
we need to shame Sky. Why the fuck is Danica getting all this time? I have taken up far too much of your time at Formula Whatever on TikTok and Twitter, Formula_whatever on Instagram, Formula Whatever on YouTube, I believe.
yes.
I don't think you should be worried about a TikTok ban, but I know that you are a little bit worried, so you're gonna step up your Instagram game.
No,
Yeah,
I'm starting to also stockpile YouTube videos. I've already done the first 2. So because I want to post starting in the new year once a week on
Nice.
YouTube. And so I know that in order to do that, I need to get ahead because there's no way I'm going to keep up. It's going to be the 3rd week. I'm going to be like, I'm not doing this again. So,
Nice.
but yeah, I am going to get serious about that because I also like, it is bad to just rely on TikTok. Not that I have other stuff, obviously. Like, TikTok and Twitter are the only ones that I like regularly post on, and that's a problem because those are the 2 most unhinged social and like unreliable social media networks.
For sure. Greatly appreciate you giving me 2 full hours of your time. It's at Scrimshaw on Twitter. It's at Scrimshaw Show on Twitter. Political writing at scrimshawscripted.substack.com. I am a freelance sports writer. If y'all would like to, if anybody listening to this would like to hire me, I used to have a much better intro before the Lions fired me, but it is what it is. Formula Whatever. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Of course, anytime.
Buy my book, Salvation in the Storm. You bought it. I don't know if you finished it yet.
I
Have you?
read a third of it, but I need to start over and fully do it.
Thoughts of the
My
part
thoughts
you've
are
read so far?
my thoughts are that it's fun.
Wow. Okay, so I know exactly where you have finished reading. If your response is fun,
I like it, and I also but I am my main takeaway that I remember from the plot is that I'm frustrated that I can't remember any other names, but he pulled that shit with the speech and like that he got him a job, and then he like immediately on his first assignment was like, I'm actually gonna do it the way I want and like totally upstage you. I'm like, that is maybe not how I would conduct myself in the workplace.
so I'm pretty sure I know exactly what the last chapter you read of this book is. And I would just like to say
In the last
the
chapter,
next chapter, then you picked a very good time to stop reading because the next chapter is fairly unhinged. Thanks so much for doing this.
of course, anytime.